Welcome back to my 5-part series about some of the best adventures that Norfolk has to offer its visitors. In the last video, I got settled into our Airbnb tiny home cottage and showed it off in all its glory. Today, I'll be headed to the North Norfolk coast, where I'll hop on a boat in search of seals and spend the afternoon at Wells next to the sea, a pretty town with a unique beach to boot.
To Stiffkey here in the North Norfolk coast, and the reason for that being is that out that way is a place called Blakeney Point. Now, technically speaking, there is a 3.5 mile trail that you can take, but it's along the coastal shore with shingle underfoot, which is supposed to be very arduous to walk on, and reviews have said that the view just doesn't change, so it's 3.5 miles of very arduous walking with quite boring scenery to potentially get to see some seals. And then of course it's only a potential, and then you've got to walk that 3.5 miles back along again that very difficult underfooting. So instead there are 4 boat providers here that take you out for £20 per person to be able to go and see the seals. So we decided to go with this option instead, so we'll see what we can see.
On the way out to the point, we passed an old life-saving boat built in 1905. With no engines back then, the holes along it were for the oars as men rowed out to sea to do their rescues. The distinctive blue building is the National Trust's Lifeboat House, home for several months of the year to coastal rangers. It houses 4 bedrooms, a kitchen, living room come home office, bathrooms, and the lookout tower. The seal population at Blakeney Point has grown rapidly over the past couple of decades. In 2001, just 25 pups were recorded, and in 2019 this has risen to 3,399. It's predicted that numbers have risen due to Blakeney Point's secluded location, meaning visitors either arrive on a restricted boat like me, or the numbers who brave the arduous shingle coastline are very few indeed. When combined with a lack of predators, the gentle sloping beaches for the seals to move inland when weather gets rough, and plenty of food, it's easy to see why the numbers are on the up. Sadly, despite the impressive numbers, these were the only seals that we saw that day. We were told most were out at sea catching their food, and learnt that fish trawlers can't fish between the offshore wind turbines, so it's actually quite common to find the seals in amongst these looking for fish.
One thing worth mentioning though about the boat trip is that you can't just go out on the boats at any time of the day. It's not wise just to rock up. You might get lucky and it might be fine, but it's all dependent on the tide, so you need to make sure that you are going out when the water is high enough for the boats to be able to go out. And for today, that was this morning. So I looked it up on Google to see if there's anywhere where we could get some fresh dressed crab that was close to Blakeney Point, and in the village of Blakeney there is a place called the Crab Shed, and it turns out to actually just be a local fisherman's house, and it's like down his back garden, and we picked up a couple of dressed crabs, and they also had some cockles as well. So our next stop has been at the village of Cley next to the sea, and there is a free car park that's at the village hall that's kind of at one end of the village, so we've just stashed the car there and we're walking back to where the shops are, because there is a smokehouse where I'm hoping to be able to go and pick up maybe some smoked salmon and also some cheeses that apparently are quite well known for here in Norfolk. And just the footpaths to get from that car park down to where the shops are they're ridiculously cute and adorable. I mean, just look at this. So we've driven just a little bit further along the coast to a place called Wells Next to the Sea. We've parked up and we're just wandering along the streets to try and get to the town centre. Our tummies are running a little bit, so I think we're going to see if we can find some fish and chips. So I don't think we could have timed lunch more awkwardly. By the time we got out of the fish and chip shop, the heavens had opened, so we managed to find a covered area just to cower under to eat. And we've come back out and it's just spitting a little bit. We've gone along past the harbour, and one of the really popular things to do at Wells Next to the Sea is to go crab fishing. I just assumed that it was going to be one of those things where it's like you would do it but you wouldn't catch anything. Pretty much everyone who had a bucket with at least one crab in it. What's really nice is a lot of the businesses along the harbour front rent the tackle, so I guess like the buckets and the nets and things, so that people aren't purchasing them and then just chucking them away, which would obviously be terrible for the environment. And there's also quite a lot of signs up letting people know what the ruling is regarding the crab, so making sure that there's no more than 3 in a bucket, if they're fighting to make sure that you split them up, things like keeping them out of sunlight as well. So it's been quite nice actually just getting to see what was going on down there. Despite its name of Wells Next to the Sea, Wells no longer is next to the sea, and it's due to the silting that has taken place. Currently I'm walking down a footpath that is 1 mile long and links the beach, or the sea, to the town of Wells. There's a couple of footpaths, one's up on the sea defence system, there's the one that I'm walking on at the moment, and there is also the option of taking a light railway that links the two, but it's so cold at the moment I've decided to walk it just in the hopes of being able to warm up by getting the blood pumping. I've managed to make it to Wells Next to the Sea's beach, but oh my goodness, as soon as we've come down onto it, there's obviously no shelter from the wind, and because it's so bitterly cold and we've had the wind blowing on us, it's absolutely freezing. As far as British beaches go though, this one does seem to be absolutely stunning, and there's a little bit of feeling of, oh, I wish we'd just been able to come when the weather was a little bit warmer, because unlike I think an awful lot of beaches that are next to towns or within towns, they tend to have a really awful and tacky seafront full of lots of arcades and what have you. This one's got these beautifully painted beach huts, and directly behind them it's just a pinewood forest. It's beautiful. So we've come now off the beach into the actual Pinewoods, and it's a mixed pine forest because it's got pine trees that have come from Scotland, but Austria and Corsica and a few other places as well. These trees were planted about 150 years ago, and it was to try and protect the inland fields that were growing crops at the time from having the wind blow the sand off of the sand dunes onto the crops, ruining them. They're still doing their job today of keeping the sand in place and stopping them from being blown inland, but it's more to protect the inland marshes now. I'm just not used to being in a pine forest that's then got sand along the floor. It's very unique and it's very beautiful and very pretty. The Granary building behind me was built between 1902 and 1904. It wasn't until 1990 did it cease operation, and it's more recently been turned into apartments. The gantry that sticks out over the top of it was created so that goods could pass between the granary and the boats without needing to halt traffic down on the ground below.
In the next episode, I'll be taking to the waters in a private rented boat to explore the Norfolk Broads National Park, getting to grips with how to drive the boat, whilst gawping at the pretty homes and the boats that we pass, all whilst being won over by the wildfowl. If you've not done so already, please consider subscribing to my channel so that you can join me in my Norfolk adventures.